Darius Williams had $4.32, his family's dinner money. But when an elderly couple couldn't afford life-saving heart medicine, the 15-year-old did something that would change everything. He gave them his last coins. What Darius didn't know was that Frank Morrison's estranged son was Richard Hale, the millionaire whose company had gutted their neighborhood. In 3 days, when that black town car appeared at Darius's door, a battle would begin between a poor boy who believed in kindness and a corporate world that only believed in profit, with an entire community hanging in the balance. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The cold evening air bit through Darius's thin jacket as he stood outside Miller's corner store, counting the coins in his palm one more time. $7.32. He'd already bought the loaf of bread tucked under his arm. That was $3 gone. His fingers, stiff from the December wind, moved the quarters and dimes around as if rearranging them might somehow make more appear. 15 years old and already doing the math that kept his family afloat. The bread would last 2 days if they were careful. His mother would make it stretch, the way she always did, cutting thinner slices and toasting the ends to make them seem more filling. Darius pocketed the remaining coins and started the 8-block walk home, his worn sneakers making soft sounds against the cracked sidewalk. The neighborhood seemed to grow quieter as the sun disappeared behind the row of apartment buildings. Windows glowed yellow with warm light, and Darius could smell dinner cooking from various homes. Fried chicken from the Washington's place, something with garlic from old Mrs. Foster's apartment. His own stomach twisted, reminding him that lunch at school had been hours ago. Free lunch, the kind where you kept your head down and moved through the line quickly so nobody paid too much attention. When he pushed open the door to their second-floor apartment, warmth wrapped around him immediately. His mother, Patricia, stood at the stove stirring something in their one good pot. His little sister, Maya, sat at the kitchen table, her math homework spread out in front of her, tongue poking out in concentration. "Got the bread, Mom," Darius said, setting it on the counter. Patricia turned, and he caught the quick flash of relief in her eyes before she smiled. "Good. That's good, baby." She lifted the pot lid, and steam rose up. Rice and beans again, with some carrots she'd gotten on sale. Darius watched her divide it onto 3 plates, noticed how her portion was noticeably smaller. "I'm not that hungry," Patricia said when she sat down, catching his look. "Had a late lunch at work." Darius knew she was lying. The factory where she worked didn't give lunch breaks long enough to eat properly, and she never brought money for the vending machines. But he also knew better than to argue. Pride was sometimes the only thing they could afford to keep intact. Maya chattered about her day, about how her teacher said she had the neatest handwriting in class, about the new girl who'd moved from Detroit. Darius half listened, watching his mother pick at her small portion, moving it around to make it look like she was eating more than she was. That night, lying on the couch that served as his bed, Darius could hear his mother in the kitchen, washing the dishes by hand because the dishwasher had broken 3 months ago. Through the thin walls, he could hear Mr. Thompson's television next door, the volume turned up loud because the old man's hearing was going. Somewhere above them, a baby cried, and footsteps paced back and forth. School the next day was the usual exercise in endurance. Darius had learned long ago how to make himself small, unremarkable. But teenagers had a special radar for weakness, for difference, for anything they could exploit. "Yo, Williams." Marcus Johnson's voice carried across the hallway. "Those the same shoes from last year?" "Man, they're growing their own ecosystem." The group around Marcus laughed. Darius kept walking, eyes forward, but Marcus wasn't done. He stepped into Darius's path, forcing him to stop. "I'm talking to you, Charity Case." "What, you too good to answer?" Mrs. Henderson walked by, just then, her arms full of textbooks. She glanced at the confrontation, and Darius saw something flicker in her eyes. Not concern, but resignation. Like she'd seen this play out too many times before and decided it was just part of the natural order. She kept walking. "Just trying to get to class," Darius said quietly. Marcus snorted. "Class, right? Like that's going to help you. Some people are just born to be nothing. You know that." The word stung, but Darius had heard worse. He stepped around Marcus, and continued down the hall, the laughter following him like a shadow. In study hall, while others talked or played on their phones, Darius pulled out his sketchbook. Not for any class. This was his private world. He drew buildings, tall ones with glass windows that caught the light. He drew himself older, wearing a suit that fit properly, standing in front of one of those buildings. In the margins, he wrote notes. Engineering degree, own business, house for Mom and Maya. Dreams cost nothing to have, even if everything else did. After school, Darius took the long way home. Not because he wanted to, but because Mrs. Chun from the first floor had asked him yesterday if he could help her with groceries today. She was 73, with arthritis that made carrying bags up the stairs nearly impossible. He found her outside the grocery store, sitting on the bench with four plastic bags at her feet. Darius. Oh, thank goodness. I bought too much again. My eyes are bigger than my strength these days. He picked up all 4 bags easily. No problem, Mrs. Chun. As they walked slowly back, Mrs. Chun needed frequent breaks. She talked about her grandson in California, about the weather, about how the neighborhood had changed over the years. Darius listened, responded when needed, and made sure to match his pace to hers. You're a good boy, she said when they reached her door. Your mother raised you right. She tried to give him $5, but Darius shook his head. It's okay. Really. Take it for your family, she insisted. We're fine, Darius lied smoothly. Save it for your medicines. Mrs. Chin's face softened. Not many like you anymore, Darius. Not many at all. Walking away from her apartment, Darius felt the weight of the coins in his pocket. $4.32 now. Dinner tonight would be tough. Maybe cereal if they still had milk. Maybe just toast with the last of the peanut butter. He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't notice the commotion outside the pharmacy until he was nearly past it. An elderly white couple stood by the entrance, their voices low but clearly distressed. The woman, probably in her late 70s, had tears on her cheeks. The man, about the same age, had his arm around her shoulders. It's okay, Ellen, the man was saying. We'll figure something out. But your heart medicine, Frank. You can't skip it. The doctor said. The doctor doesn't pay our bills, Frank said gently. We'll make do. Maybe next month. Darius slowed his steps. Through the pharmacy window, he could see the pharmacist, Mr. Peterson, looking uncomfortable as he held a prescription bag. I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson was saying as Darius got closer. I can't reduce the price any more than I already have. With your insurance, it's still $87. We have 60, Frank said quietly. That's all we have until Social Security comes next week. Helen was crying harder now. He needs this medicine. Please, isn't there something? I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson repeated, and Darius could tell he genuinely was. I've already applied every discount I can. Darius stood frozen. $4.32 in his pocket. His family needed dinner. His mother would be waiting, wondering what they'd eat tonight. Maya would be hungry after her after-school program. But this old man needed medicine for his heart. Real medicine, not just food that would come again tomorrow or the next day. Darius thought about his mother skipping meals. He thought about Maya doing homework while hungry. He thought about the dreams in his sketchbook that seemed so far away they might as well be on the moon. Then he looked at Helen's tears and Frank's arm around her, the way they held each other up even when everything was falling apart. His hand went to his pocket. The coins felt heavier than they should. Because someone has to, he whispered to himself, words he didn't even know where they came from. He walked into the pharmacy. Excuse me, he said to Mr. Peterson. His voice cracked a little, and he cleared his throat. How much did you say they were short? Mr. Peterson looked at him, confused. $27, but Darius pulled out his coins. $4.32. It wasn't enough. It wasn't close to enough. But he put on the counter anyway. I want to help, he said. Frank turned to look at him, and his eyes widened. Son, no, you can't. Wait, Mr. Peterson said. He looked at the coins, then at Darius, then at the elderly couple. Something shifted in his face. You know what? I just remembered. There's another manufacturer's coupon I forgot to apply. Let me recalculate. He typed something into his computer, fingers moving quickly. Well, would you look at that? With the additional discount and what you have here, we're only short by. He paused, glanced at Darius again. Nothing. We're not short anything. Helen gasped. But how? Computer error in your favor, Mr. Peterson said firmly. He took the $60 from Frank and the $4.32 from Darius. Then he handed Frank the prescription bag. Make sure you take these with food, Mr. Frank. Frank's hands shook as he took the bag. He looked at Darius, and his eyes were wet. Why would you do this? You don't even know us. Darius shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable with the attention. Because someone had to, he said again, louder this time. Helen moved forward suddenly and pulled him into a hug. She smelled like lavender and something medicinal. God bless you, she whispered against his shoulder. God bless you, young man. Darius extracted himself gently, mumbled something about needing to get home, and left quickly. Behind him, he heard Mr. Peterson saying something about payment plans and other assistance programs. The walk home felt longer with empty pockets. Each step reminded him that there would be no dinner tonight beyond whatever they had in the cupboards. His mother would ask where the money went. Maya would go to bed hungry, but somewhere in his chest, where the cold usually sat like a stone, something warm had taken residence. Behind him, standing at the pharmacy window, someone watched him walk away. The figure pulled out a phone, dialed a number. You need to see something, the voice said. That boy your parents have been talking about? I just watched him give his last money to help them buy medicine. His last money. There was a pause. Yes, I'm sure. The pharmacist confirmed it. The kid had $4 in change, and he gave it all. No, he doesn't know them. He just did it because, and I quote, someone had to. Another pause. I think you need to come home, Richard. Your parents and this boy. There's something here. Something important. Darius turned the corner, unaware of the conversation, unaware that his small act of kindness had set something in motion that would change everything. All he knew was that his stomach was empty, his pockets were empty, but somehow, inexplicably, he felt fuller than he had in years. The apartment was warm and smelled like his mother had managed to make something for dinner after all. Darius could hear the scrape of forks on plates from the kitchen as he closed the door quietly behind him. Darius? His mother called. That you, baby? Yeah, Mom. He walked into the kitchen to find his mother and Maya at the table, sharing what looked like a can of soup and crackers. His mother had set a place for him with a bowl waiting. Saved you some, Patricia said, starting to stand. Let me heat it up. I'm okay, Darius said quickly. Not hungry. Patricia froze, her eyes narrowing. 15 years of being his mother had taught her every tell he had. Where's the change from the bread? Darius couldn't meet her eyes. There wasn't any. Darius Anthony Williams. His full name. Never a good sign. That bread was $3. You had $7.32 when you left this morning. I know because I counted it with you. Maya looked between them, sensing the tension. Mom. Hush, baby, Patricia said gently to Maya, but her eyes stayed on Darius. Where's the money? I helped someone, Darius said quietly. You helped. Patricia's voice rose, then caught. She pressed her hands flat on the table, visibly controlling herself. You gave away our food money? They needed medicine, Mom. Heart medicine. They're old, and they didn't have enough. We don't have enough. Patricia's control snapped. We never have enough. And you gave away what little we had to strangers. Mom, Maya said softly. He was being a hero. Patricia whirled on her daughter. Heroes don't let their families go hungry, Maya. Heroes provide for their own first. They were crying, Darius said, his own voice stronger now. She was crying because he might die without his medicine. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to think about your sister. Patricia's voice cracked. You were supposed to think about keeping a roof over our heads. You were supposed to... She stopped, pressing her palms against her eyes. When she dropped them, Darius could see she was crying too. I work 14 hours a day, she whispered. 14 hours, and it's still not enough. And now you just give it away. I'm sorry, Darius said, and he meant it. But he also wasn't sorry, and that contradiction sat heavy in his chest. Patricia sank back into her chair. Go to bed, Darius. Just go to bed. He wanted to explain more, wanted to make her understand, but the exhaustion in her voice stopped him. He went to the living room, lay down on the couch without changing, and pulled the thin blanket over himself. Through the wall, He could hear Maya whispering to their mother. "He did a good thing, Mom, even if it was hard. Isn't that what you always tell us? To do the right thing, even when it's hard." "The right thing," Patricia repeated, so quiet Darius almost couldn't hear. "Baby girl, sometimes I don't even know what that is anymore." Darius lay awake as the apartment settled into sleep around him. His stomach cramped with hunger, a sharp reminder of his choice. He pressed his hand against it and closed his eyes, tried to remember the look on Frank's face when Mr. Peterson handed him the medicine. The relief, the gratitude, the surprise that a stranger would care. At 3 a.m, Darius woke to soft footsteps. His mother stood beside the couch, looking down at him in the dim light from the street. She set something on the coffee table, a piece of toast with the last scraping of peanut butter. "Eat," she whispered. "Mom, eat, baby. You need something in your stomach." She sat on the edge of the couch by his feet, and they stayed like that in the darkness, not talking. Finally, she said, "Your father would have done the same thing." Darius had no memories of his father, who died when he was 2, but his mother rarely mentioned him, so these words felt like something precious. "I'm still mad," she continued, "and scared, but maybe I'm a little proud too. Don't let it go to your head." She squeezed his foot through the blanket and went back to bed. Darius ate the toast slowly, making it last, each bite a small communion with his mother's complicated love. The next morning at school, whispers followed him through the hallways. By lunch, everyone seemed to know. The cashier at the pharmacy, Mrs. Robertson, had a daughter at the school, and teenagers had a way of spreading stories faster than wildfire. "Yo, heard you gave away your lunch money to some old white people," Marcus said, blocking Darius's path to the cafeteria. "That true?" Darius tried to move around him, but Marcus's friends formed a wall. "What kind of fool gives away his last money?" Marcus continued, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You that desperate for white folks to like you?" "It wasn't about that," Darius said. "Then what was it about? You think you're some kind of saint now? Some kind of hero?" "No." "Then you're just stupid," Marcus concluded. "Pathetic and stupid. Your family's struggling, and you're out here playing charity case for strangers." The words hit harder because they echoed his mother's anger, his own doubts. But before he could respond, someone else spoke up. At least he did something. Everyone turned. It was Jasmine, a girl from Darius's English class who usually kept to herself. "When's the last time any of you helped anybody who wasn't yourselves?" Marcus sneered. "Mind your business, Jasmine." "This is my business," she shot back. "All you do is tear people down." At least Darius tried to build something up. She pushed through the group, grabbed Darius's arm, and pulled him along. "Come on, you can share my lunch." As they walked away, Darius heard Marcus mutter something about bleeding hearts, but the words had lost their sting. In the cafeteria, Jasmine split her sandwich with him. "My mom heard about what you did for Mrs. Robertson. She said it was the kindest thing she'd heard in a long time." "Your mom doesn't have to feed my family," Darius said quietly. "No," Jasmine agreed. "But maybe that's not the only thing that matters." After school, Darius walked home slowly, dreading what might be waiting. But as he approached his building, he saw 2 figures sitting on the front steps. Frank and Helen, the elderly couple from yesterday. Frank stood when he saw him, moving carefully but steadily. "We've been waiting for you." "How did you?" "The pharmacist, Mr. Peterson. He told us your name, helped us find where you lived." Helen was holding an envelope. "We wanted to thank you properly." "You don't need to." "Please," Helen interrupted. "Let us do this much." She handed him the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on cream-colored paper that felt expensive to the touch. "Read it later," Frank said. "When you're alone." They didn't stay long, clearly sensing that the neighborhood made them nervous as evening approached. But before they left, Frank gripped Darius's shoulder. "What you did yesterday, it reminded me that there's still good in this world. Still people who care about strangers. Don't let anyone tell you different." After they left, Darius sat on the steps and read the note. "Dear Darius, kindness is never wasted. You gave us more than money yesterday. You gave us hope. In a world that often feels cold and uncaring, you reminded us that warmth still exists, that young people still have hearts that see suffering and choose to act. You gave your last coins to strangers, And that makes you richer than most people we know. With gratitude and affection, Frank and Helen Morrison. Darius folded the note carefully and put it in his sketchbook between his drawings of impossible futures. Maybe they weren't so impossible after all. That evening, a Blacktown car cruised slowly through the neighborhood. Neighbors noticed cars like that didn't belong here unless someone was in trouble. Curtains twitched as people watched it pass. Inside the car, Richard Hale looked out at the buildings, the cracked sidewalks, the kids playing in the dim light. His driver, Thomas, glanced in the rearview mirror. "You sure about this, Mr. Hale?" "My parents live somewhere around here now," Richard said, though that wasn't really an answer to the question. "They used to live in Westwood. Now they're here." "Times change," Thomas offered diplomatically. "Yes," Richard agreed. "They do." The car stopped briefly outside an apartment building. Richard watched a teenage boy helping an elderly neighbor with her trash, taking the heavy bag without being asked. The boy was thin, wearing clothes that had seen better days, but he moved with a quiet dignity that Richard recognized. His parents had that same quality: pride without arrogance, strength without hardness. "That him?" Thomas asked. "That's him. Darius Williams. Doesn't look like much." "No," Richard agreed. "He doesn't. Makes what he did even more remarkable." They drove on, but Richard's mind stayed with the boy. Tomorrow he would make his move. Tomorrow he would knock on that door and see what kind of person gave away their last money to help his estranged parents. Back in the apartment, Darius heard his mother crying again. Soft sounds she probably thought he couldn't hear. The bills were spread across the kitchen table: electric, gas, rent. All with red stamps. All demanding money they didn't have. He wanted to go to her to promise it would be okay, but what good were promises you couldn't keep? Instead, he pulled out his sketchbook and drew. He drew his mother laughing, the way she used to when his father was alive, stories Maya had told him that she'd heard from their aunt. He drew Maya in a cap and gown, graduating from somewhere important. He drew himself building something, creating something, being something more than a poor kid from a struggling neighborhood. And in the corner of the page, he drew two elderly people standing close together, the man holding a pharmacy bag, both of them smiling. Underneath, he wrote, "Because someone had to, tomorrow would bring whatever it brought." Tonight, despite the hunger, despite his mother's tears, despite the weight of their poverty, Darius felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The black car had parked 2 blocks away. Richard sat in the back, looking at a photo on his phone. It was from the pharmacy security camera, Darius putting his coins on the counter, his face determined and scared and brave all at once. "Your parents don't know, do they?" Carla, his assistant, had asked when she'd send him the photo. "They don't know their own son has been watching." "No," Richard had replied. "And they won't. Not yet." Now, in the darkness of the car, Richard thought about bridges. How they could be burned in a moment, but took years to rebuild. How sometimes you needed help from unexpected places to span the gap. A 15-year-old boy had given his last coins to help Richard's parents. Tomorrow, Richard would find out what kind of person did something like that. And maybe, just maybe, he'd find out if that person could help him build a bridge he'd thought was destroyed forever. The night deepened. In his apartment, Darius finally fell asleep, his stomach empty but his conscience clear. His mother sat at the kitchen table, calculator in hand, trying to make numbers work that refused to cooperate. Maya dreamed of being a doctor, of healing people the way that boy at the pharmacy had healed those old people's hearts. And 2 blocks away, a millionaire sat in his car, holding a photo of a poor boy's kindness, planning how to repay a debt that money couldn't actually settle. The ripples from one small act of kindness spread outward through the night, touching lives in ways no one could yet imagine. Tomorrow would bring revelations, confrontations, and choices that would change everything. But tonight, in the darkness, all that existed was the echo of a simple truth. Someone had to help, and Darius Williams had chosen to be that someone, even when it cost him everything he had. The morning after Frank and Helen's visit, Darius woke to the sound of something hitting his window. Then another tap. He pulled back the curtain to see Marcus Johnson standing in the courtyard below, a handful of pebbles in his fist. "Get down here, charity boy," Marcus shouted. "We got business." Darius knew better than to ignore him. Marcus had a way of escalating things when he felt disrespected. He pulled on his shoes and headed downstairs, his mother's warning to be careful following him out the door. The courtyard was empty except for Marcus and two of his friends, Tyler and Jerome. They formed a semicircle as Darius approached, backing him toward the wall. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said, not waiting for an answer. "You think you're better than us, walking around here acting like some kind of saint." "I don't think that," Darius said quietly. "No? Then why are you giving away money to white folks when people here are struggling? My cousin's kid needed medicine last month. Where were you then?" The question stung because it had a point. Darius hadn't known about Marcus's cousin, but would he have helped if he had? Would he have given his last money to someone who tormented him daily? "I didn't know," Darius said. Marcus stepped closer. "You didn't know because you don't care about your own people. You just want those white folks to pat you on the head, tell you you're one of the good ones." He shoved Darius hard against the wall. Darius felt a rough brick scrape through his thin shirt, but didn't push back. Fighting would only make things worse. "Fight back," Marcus shouted, shoving him again. "Come on, were you too good for that too? Leave him alone, Marcus." Everyone turned. Mrs. Washington stood in her doorway, wearing her Postal Service uniform, arms crossed. "This ain't your business, Mrs. W.," Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "Everything that happens in this courtyard is my business," she replied. "And I know your grandmother, Marcus. You want me to call her? Tell her how you're spending your morning." Marcus's jaw clenched. His grandmother was the one person he actually feared. "We were just talking. Looked like more than talking to me. Now move along. All of you." Marcus glared at Darius. "This ain't over." But he left his friends trailing behind. Mrs. Washington waited until they were gone before speaking to Darius. "You can't save everyone, you know." "I know. Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, looks like you're trying to save everyone but yourself." She went back inside, leaving Darius alone with that thought. At school, things were worse. The story had grown in the telling, the way stories do. Now people were saying he'd given away hundreds of dollars, that he was secretly rich, that the old couple were going to adopt him. None of it was true, but truth had never been a requirement for high school gossip. In history class, Mr. Brennan was lecturing about the Great Depression when he stopped mid-sentence, looking directly at Darius. "Mr. Williams, since you seem to know so much about charity, perhaps you can tell us about the breadlines of the 1930s? Darius hadn't been talking. He'd been taking notes. But Mr. Brennan had heard the rumors too, and some teachers couldn't resist taking shots at students who made news. People who couldn't afford food would wait in lines for free bread. Darius answered carefully. "And was that sustainable?" Mr. Brennan pressed. "All that giving away of resources." "It kept people alive," Darius said. "But did it fix the problem? Or did it just enable dependency?" The class was silent, everyone sensing this was about more than history. "I think," Darius said slowly, "sometimes keeping people alive is the first step to fixing the problem." Mr. Brennan's face reddened. "That's a very naive view, Mr. Williams. The real world doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on personal responsibility. People need to learn to take care of themselves, not wait for handouts. Like bank bailouts." Jasmine asked from her seat. "Those were handouts, right? To people who already had money." "That's different." "Ow!" Jasmine continued. "How is helping rich people who made bad decisions different from helping poor people who are sick?" "Miss Turner, that's enough." "No, I want to know." Another student, David, chimed in. "Why is it only called a handout when poor people get help?" The class erupted in debate. Mr. Brennan tried to regain control, but the bell rang, saving him from further embarrassment. As students filed out, he called after Darius. "Your bleeding heart is going to get you hurt, Williams. The world doesn't reward weakness." "If kindness is weakness," Darius replied, "then I guess I'm okay with being weak." He left before Mr. Brennan could respond. After school, Darius was surprised to find Frank and Helen waiting by the entrance. They looked out of place among the students, but they stood there with quiet determination. "We need to talk to you," Frank said. "Properly this time. Is everything okay?" The medicine is fine," Helen assured him. "We want to thank you. Really thank you. Will you walk with us?" Darius glanced around. Students were staring, some taking pictures with their phones. But Frank and Helen had come all this way, so he nodded. They walked slowly, Frank's pace measured due to his heart condition. Helen linked her arm through her husband's on one side and, to Darius's surprise, reached for his arm on the other. "We've been talking about you," she said. "About what you did. Frank and we've lost faith in people these past few years. The world got hard, and we got bitter." "You had reasons," Darius said, thinking of their obvious financial struggles. "Everyone has reasons," Frank replied. "But reasons can become excuses. We used to be different. We used to believe in helping others in community. Then our son," he stopped, pain flickering across his face. "You don't have to tell me," Darius said. "No, we want to," Helen said. "Our son became successful, very successful, and somewhere along the way, he decided that our values were foolish, that helping others was weakness, that only profits mattered." Frank picked up the story. "We had a fight, a terrible fight. He said we were naive, that we'd never amounted to anything because we were too soft. We said he'd lost his soul chasing money. Things were said that couldn't be taken back. That was 3 years ago," Helen added. "We haven't spoken since. He cut us off completely. Not just financially, we never wanted his money anyway, but emotionally. We lost our son." They walked in silence for a moment, processing the weight of that loss. "Then you came along," Frank continued. "A stranger with nothing, giving us everything you had. It reminded us who we used to be, who we want to be again." They had reached Darius's building. Frank pulled out his wallet, extracted a $20 bill. "No," Darius said immediately. "I didn't do it for money." "We know," Helen said. "That's why you need to take it. Not as payment, but as, call it an investment. In hope. My family needs it," Darius admitted, his pride warring with pragmatism. "Then take it for them," Frank said, pressing the bill into Darius's hand. "And know that you've given us something worth much more." As they turned to leave, a black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down halfway, but whoever was inside didn't speak. Frank and Helen didn't seem to notice, but Darius felt eyes on him. After a moment, the window rolled up and the car pulled away. "Who was that?" Darius asked his mother that evening, describing the car. Patricia looked up from her sewing. She'd been patching Maya's school uniform. "I don't know, baby, but Mrs. Washington said she's seen it around a few times. Be careful. You think it's cops? Cops don't drive cars that nice," Patricia said. "Just be careful." That night, Darius heard his mother on the phone with her sister. "I don't know what to do, Denise. The rent's due in 3 days, and even with what Darius brought home today, we're short. Mr. Coleman says he can't give us another extension." "No, I can't ask you again. You've done enough." I know. But this is my responsibility." Darius lay on his couch, staring at the ceiling. $20 had helped, but it was like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. They needed a miracle. The next morning, Saturday, Darius woke to find a man in an expensive suit standing in their living room, talking to his mother. Patricia looked confused and slightly defensive. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale. Richard Hale." The man turned to look at Darius, and something flickered in his eyes. "And you must be Darius." Richard Hale stood in their small living room like he'd been dropped from another planet. Everything about him, from his perfectly tailored suit to his Italian leather shoes, screamed money. But there was something else in his face, something Darius couldn't quite read. "How do you know my son?" Patricia asked, stepping protectively closer to Darius. Richard seemed to consider his words carefully. "I know of him, through some mutual acquaintances, Frank and Helen Morrison." Darius straightened. "Are they okay?" "They're fine," Richard assured him. "In fact, they're the reason I'm here." In a way. He pulled out his phone, showed them a photo. It was from the pharmacy security camera, Darius at the counter with his coins. "How did you get that?" Patricia demanded. "The pharmacist is a friend. He thought I should see it." Richard put his phone away. "You see, Mrs. Williams, Frank and Helen Morrison are my parents." The room went silent. Maya, who'd been peeking from the bedroom doorway, came fully into view. "Your parents?" Patricia repeated. "But they're living in poverty while their son lives in a mansion?" Richard's voice carried a bitter edge. "Yes, that's a choice they made. Or rather, a choice we all made." He moved to the window, looking out at the courtyard below where kids were playing. 3 years ago, we had a disagreement. They accused me of losing my humanity in pursuit of success. I accused them of being foolish dreamers who'd never amount to anything. We were both right, and both wrong. Why are you telling us this? Darius asked. Richard turned back to them. Because you did something I couldn't do. You saw their need and met it, even though it cost you everything. You showed them kindness when their own son wouldn't. That's not, Darius started, but Richard held up a hand. Please, let me finish. I've been watching, not in a creepy way, he added quickly, seeing Patricia's expression. But I needed to understand. What kind of person give away their last money to strangers? What kind of family raises someone like that? He looked at Patricia. You work at the textile factory on Riverside. Double shifts when you can get them. You're behind on rent. Your daughter needs new shoes for school, and you haven't bought yourself anything new in 2 years. How dare you? Patricia began, but Richard continued. You volunteer at the community center on Sundays, teaching adult literacy classes. For free. Despite everything you're going through, you still help others. He turned to Maya. You tutor younger kids in math after school. Also for free. You want to be a doctor, and you have the grades for it, but you know your family can't afford college. Maya's eyes widened. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know about remarkable people, Richard said. And this is a remarkable family. We're not looking for charity, Patricia said stiffly. I'm not offering charity, Richard replied. I'm offering opportunity. A transaction, if you will. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase. My parents don't know I'm here. They're proud people like you. They wouldn't accept help from me directly. But you they trust. You've earned something from them I haven't had in 3 years, their respect. What are you asking? Darius said. Help me reconnect with them. Be the bridge. In exchange, I'll make sure your rent is paid. Not as charity, but as compensation for your time. I'll also arrange for a scholarship fund for both you and your sister. Not a handout. You'll have to maintain your grades and do community service. But your education will be covered. Patricia shook her head. You can't just buy. I'm not buying anything, Richard interrupted. I'm investing in a family that understands something I forgot. That success without humanity is failure. My company needs people like your son. People who understand that profit isn't the only bottom line. And if we say no, Darius asked, then I leave and you never see me again. But my parents continue to struggle, and so do you. Everyone loses. Richard set the folder on their coffee table. I'm not asking for an answer now. Think about it. Discuss it as a family. My contact information is in there. He moved toward the door, then paused. You know, Darius, when I was your age, I was a lot like you. Poor, angry at the world, determined to be something more. The difference is, I let that anger harden me. You let your struggles soften you, make you more compassionate. That's rare. After he left, the family sat in silence for a long moment. We can't trust him, Patricia said finally. Why not? Maya asked. He seems genuine. Rich people are never genuine, Patricia replied. There's always an angle. Maybe his angle is just wanting his parents back, Darius suggested. Patricia laughed bitterly. Baby, you don't get that rich by wanting family. You get that rich by choosing money over everything else. But Darius was thinking about Frank and Helen, about the pain in their voices when they talked about their son. Everyone deserves a second chance, Mom. Not everyone, Patricia said. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. But some can, Maya added quietly. And if we can help and get our rent paid, Patricia added, practicality winning over pride for a moment. Then she shook her head. No, it's not right. Using those old people's trust like that. We wouldn't be using them, Darius argued. We'd be helping them. And he'd be helping us. Everyone wins. Life doesn't work that way, Patricia said. Someone always loses. They spent the day debating, going in circles. That evening, Darius went for a walk to clear his head. He found himself at the pharmacy where it all started. Mr. Peterson was behind the counter. Darius, good to see you. How are Frank and Helen? They're okay. Mr. Peterson, can I ask you something? Sure. That day, with the medicine, you didn't really find another coupon, did you? Mr. Peterson smiled sadly. Sometimes the register makes mistakes in our favor. Sometimes I make mistakes in the register's favor. The company won't miss $23, but Frank might have missed his life without that medicine. So I did what needed to be done, just like you did. He leaned forward. That's what community means, Darius. We help each other, even when it costs us. What if helping someone means getting involved with their family drama? Mr. Peterson considered this. Family drama has a way of finding us whether we want it or not. The question is, can you help without hurting anyone? I don't know, Darius admitted. Then trust your instincts. They've been pretty good so far. Walking home, Darius found himself thinking about Richard's words. About being a bridge. Maybe that's what he'd always been. Someone who connected different worlds, different people. The kid who helped elderly neighbors and tutored younger students. The one who saw need and tried to meet it. When he got home, Frank and Helen were there, having tea with his mother. The contrast was almost surreal. The elderly white couple in their worn but clean clothes, his mother in her work uniform, all sitting around their small kitchen table. We wanted to check on you, Helen was saying. Make sure you were all doing okay. We're fine, Patricia said, but her tone was warmer than Darius expected. Actually, Frank said, we have a proposition. Helen and I receive Social Security, but it's barely enough. We were wondering if Darius might help us with grocery shopping and errands. We'd pay him, of course. You don't have money to spare, Patricia said gently. We have enough for this, Helen insisted. Please, it would help us, and we know things are tight for you. Patricia looked at Darius, and he saw her pride battling with necessity again. It's his decision, she said finally. I'll help, Darius said immediately, but not for money. As friends. Friends can still pay each other for services, Frank said firmly. Don't rob us of our dignity, son. The word son hung in the air. Frank colored slightly, but didn't take it back. Later, after they'd left, Patricia said quietly, they really love you. They're just grateful. No, baby. That's love. They look at you the way. She paused. The way parents look at a son. They have a son, Darius reminded her. Do they? Patricia asked. A son who hasn't spoken to them in 3 years? Who left them to struggle alone? She picked up Richard's folder, still sitting unopened on the coffee table. Maybe we should at least hear him out. You said we couldn't trust him. I don't trust him, Patricia clarified. But I trust you. And if you think you can help those old people reconcile with their son, maybe we should try. And the money? Darius asked. Patricia's laugh was tired but real. Baby, I'm too exhausted to be proud anymore. We need help. If he's offering it in exchange for something we'd do anyway, helping Frank and Helen, then maybe it's okay. That night, Richard sat in his office, looking at photos. His parents through the years, young and hopeful, middle-aged and struggling, elderly and worn down. And now, recent photos of them with Darius, smiling in a way they hadn't in years. His phone rang. Carla, his assistant. The board is asking questions, she said without preamble. About your interest in the Williams family. Let them ask. Richard, if you're planning something with this family, you need to be careful. The optics. The optics of helping a struggling family? The optics of a white millionaire getting involved with a black family in poverty. It could look like exploitation. Richard was quiet for a moment. What if it's not about optics? What if it's just about doing the right thing? Since when do you care about that? Since a 15-year-old boy showed me what I've been missing. He hung up and continued looking at the photos. Tomorrow he would know their answer. Tomorrow he would know if bridges could indeed be rebuilt, or if some chasms were simply too wide to cross. In his apartment, Darius lay awake thinking about connections, visible and invisible, chosen and circumstantial. How one act of kindness had rippled outward, touching lives he'd never expected. He thought about Richard's parents, estranged from their son. He thought about his own father, gone before he could really know him. He thought about bridges and gaps, and the courage it took to reach across them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, Darius felt like he was part of something bigger than survival. Something that might actually matter. The next morning came too early, with sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and the sound of someone knocking firmly on their door. Darius was already awake, had been for hours, his mind churning over Richard's offer. His mother emerged from her bedroom, still in her nightgown, looking tired from her late shift. "Who's knocking at 7 in the morning?" she muttered, peering through the peephole. Her body tensed. "It's him. That Richard Hale." She looked at Darius. "Did you call him?" "No, Mom. I didn't." Patricia opened the door partially, the chain still on. "Mr. Hale, it's very early." "I apologize," Richard said, and he did look genuinely sorry. "I have a board meeting at 9, and I want to speak with you before then. It's important." Patricia studied him for a moment, then undid the chain. "Come in, but keep your voice down. Maya's still sleeping." Richard entered, looking less composed than he had yesterday. His tie was slightly crooked, and there were shadows under his eyes like he hadn't slept either. "I owe you more honesty," he began without preamble. "About my parents. About why this matters so much." Patricia crossed her arms, but nodded for him to continue. "My father had a heart attack 2 years ago. A mild one, but enough to scare us all. I tried to reach out then, try to pay for his medical bills anonymously. They found out it was me and sent the money back. Every penny." His voice carried a weight of hurt. "They'd rather struggle than take anything from me." "Pride," Patricia said quietly. "I understand that." "Do you?" Richard asked. "Because I don't. I don't understand choosing poverty over help. I don't understand letting your principles literally kill you." "That's because you've never been poor," Darius said, surprising himself by speaking up. "When you're poor, pride is sometimes all you have. Taking it away feels like losing the last piece of yourself." Richard looked at him with something like respect. "You're 15. How are you so wise?" "Poverty ages you fast," Patricia said dryly. Maya appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "What's going on?" "Mr. Hale was just leaving," Patricia said. "No, wait," Richard said. "Please. I came here to say something specific." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This isn't charity. This isn't me trying to buy you. This is 3 months' salary for a job on offer, Darius." "I'm 15, Darius said. "I can't work full-time." "Not full-time. Part-time. After school and weekends. Officially, you'll be a community liaison for my company's new charitable foundation. Unofficially, you'll help me understand how to reconnect with my parents without destroying what little relationship they have left." "And if he can't?" Patricia asked. "If your parents don't want to reconcile, then he still keeps the job. The foundation needs someone who understands the community, who knows what real need looks like." Richard set the envelope on the table. "That's $5,000. If you decide to take the job, it's yours. If not, I'll leave and won't bother you again." Patricia stared at the envelope like it might bite her. $5,000? 3 months advance, as I said. After that, it's $1,500 a month for part-time work. 20 hours a week maximum, less during exam periods. "That's more than I make at the factory," Patricia whispered. "That's wrong," Richard said simply. "But I can't fix the entire economy. I can only fix this." Maya had moved closer, her eyes wide. "Mom, that would cover rent and—" "I know what it would cover," Patricia said sharply. "Then softer, I know, baby." Darius picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside, he could see a check and what looked like an employment contract. What would I actually be doing? Learning the business, attending some meetings, helping design the foundation's programs. And yes, helping me figure out how to talk to my parents again. Richard's voice cracked slightly on the last part. "Why us?" Patricia asked. "Why this family?" Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Because your son did something I've never seen. He gave when he had nothing to give. He helped people who couldn't help him back. He showed kindness without expecting reward. Those are the qualities I want in my foundation. Those are the qualities I need to learn." There was a knock at the door. Patricia looked through the peephole and gasped. "It's them. Frank and Helen." Richard went pale. "They're here. You didn't know?" Darius asked. "No. We should coordinate this better. I should go." But Patricia had already opened the door. Frank and Helen stood there, Helen carrying a casserole dish, Frank holding a small potted plant. "We brought breakfast," Helen started, then saw Richard. The casserole dish trembled in her hands. "Mom," Richard said, the word barely a whisper. Frank's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, grief, and something that might have been hope. Richard. For a moment, nobody moved. The hallway seemed to shrink, too small to hold all the history and hurt between them. We should go, Helen said, but her voice was uncertain. No, Darius said, surprising everyone, including himself. You should stay. All of you. He looked at Richard. You said you wanted my help? This is me helping. Everybody sits down. Everybody eats breakfast. Nobody leaves until we at least try. Darius, his mother warned. But Frank spoke up. The boy's right. He looked at his son, really looked at him for the first time in 3 years. Running away hasn't solved anything. Helen was crying silently. Richard moved toward her, stopped, his hands helpless at his sides. Mom, please don't cry. I'm not crying because I'm sad, Helen said. I'm crying because you're here. You're really here. She set down the casserole and pulled him into a hug. Richard stood stiff for a moment, then slowly, carefully put his arms around his mother. Frank watched them, his jaw tight. This doesn't fix everything, he said to Richard. I know, Richard replied over his mother's shoulder. But maybe it's a start. Patricia, ever practical, took the casserole from the floor where Helen had set it. Everyone inside. Maya, set the table. Darius, make coffee. Mr. Hale, Richard, you can help. And just like that, Patricia took control, directing traffic in her small kitchen, putting everyone to work. It was genius, really. Busy hands made difficult conversations easier. As Darius made coffee, Richard stood beside him, looking lost. I don't know what to say to them, he admitted quietly. Start with the truth, Darius suggested. Tell them you miss them. It can't be that simple. Why not? Richard looked at this 15-year-old boy with wonder. How did you become so wise? Already told you, Darius said, pouring water into the coffee maker. Poverty ages you fast. But also, my mom always says the most complicated problems usually have simple solutions. We just make them complicated because simple is scary. Simple is scary, Richard repeated. Yes, that's exactly it. They gathered around the small table. 7 people crowded into a space meant for 4. Helen had made an egg casserole that smelled like home, even to Darius who'd never had it before. The conversation started carefully, everyone stepping around the landmines of the past. This is good, Mom, Richard said, taking another bite. Your favorite, Helen said softly. I remembered. You live near here now? Richard asked, though he already knew. About 6 blocks, Frank answered. Smaller place, but it's enough. Dad, about the money. Don't, Frank said sharply. We didn't take it then, we won't take it now. I wasn't offering, Richard said. I was going to apologize for thinking money could fix what I broke. Frank looked surprised. He set down his fork. You're apologizing? I'm trying to. I'm not very good at it. No, Helen said with a small smile. You never were. Even as a child, you'd rather do extra chores than say sorry. Some things don't change, Richard admitted. Maya, who'd been quiet, suddenly spoke up. Why did you fight? The real reason. The adults all looked at her, then at each other. Maya, Patricia warned. No, it's okay, Richard said. She deserves to know. They all do. He took a breath. My parents raised me to believe in helping others, in community, in putting people before profit. But when I got to business school, then into the corporate world, those values seemed naive. Weak. They're not weak, Frank said. I know that now. But then, I was 25, making more money than you'd ever seen, and I thought I knew better. I thought your way had kept you poor, and my way would make us rich. We never wanted to be rich, Helen said. I know, but I wanted it for you. I wanted to give you everything you'd never had. And when you wouldn't take it, I felt rejected. Like you were choosing poverty over me. We were choosing our principles, Frank said. I understand that now. But then, it felt like you were choosing to be martyrs. And I said things, terrible things. We both did, Frank admitted. I called you heartless. Said you'd sold your soul. You weren't entirely wrong, Richard said quietly. They ate in silence for a moment, years of hurt settling around them like dust. But then this one, Richard continued, looking at Darius, showed me something. That you can be poor and rich at the same time. Rich in spirit, in community, in love. Things I'd forgotten existed. Don't put that on me, Darius said. I just helped some people buy medicine. You did more than that, Frank said. You reminded us, too, that strangers can be kind, that help can come from unexpected places. The breakfast continued with careful conversation, everyone testing the waters of reconciliation. Then Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. I'm sorry, I have to take this. He stepped into the hallway, but his voice carried through the thin walls. Yes, I understand. No, I won't be at the board meeting. This is more important. I don't care what they think, Carla. When he came back, his face was grim. I have to ask you all something, and I need complete honesty. Everyone waited. My board of directors knows about you, he said to Darius. About what you did. They want to use it for publicity. Millionaire helps poor kid who helped his parents. That kind of thing. Absolutely not, Patricia said immediately. I agree, Richard said. But if I refuse, they'll make my life difficult. Maybe even push me out of my CEO position. Then refuse, Frank said. Some things are more important than positions. Richard smiled sadly. You would say that. Because it's true, Helen added. Richard looked at Darius. This affects you most. What do you want? Darius thought about it. Really thought about it. I want my mom not to worry about rent, he said finally. I want your parents to smile like they did today. And someday I want a chance to learn to build things. He paused. But I don't want to be anyone's poster child. Then you won't be, Richard said firmly. But I need your help with something else. The foundation I mentioned, I want it to be real. Not just a tax write-off, but something that actually helps people. How? Patricia asked, still skeptical. Starting with a prescription fund at the pharmacy. People who can't afford their medicines can apply for help. No publicity, no names in the paper. Just help when it's needed. That's a good start, Frank said grudgingly. And I want Darius to help run it. Not just as an employee, but as a junior board member. Learn the business, but keep the heart. I'm 15, Darius protested. 16 next month, Maya corrected. Mom told me. 16 then. Old enough to learn. Old enough to make a difference. Patricia looked at her son. This is your choice, baby. But think carefully. Once you enter his world, you can't just leave. Why not? Richard asked. Because that's not who he is, Patricia said. He commits. Fully. It's his blessing and his curse. Darius looked around the table. At his mother, tired but hopeful. At Maya, excited about possibilities. At Frank and Helen, watching him with something like parental pride. At Richard, offering a chance at something more. I have conditions, Darius said. Richard smiled, a real smile this time. Of course you do. First, any help we give through the foundation has to include everyone. Not just certain neighborhoods or certain people. Everyone who needs it. Agreed. Second, Maya gets a tutoring program. The best. She's going to be a doctor, and she needs the best chance at that. Hey, Maya protested. This is about you, not me. It's about all of us, Darius corrected. That's my third condition. My family isn't just Mom and Maya. It's also Mrs. Chun downstairs, Mrs. Washington who watches out for everyone, Mr. Peterson at the pharmacy. The foundation helps the community, not just individuals. That's a big ask, Richard said. You're a big company, Darius countered. Richard laughed, surprising everyone. You know, in boardrooms full of MBAs and lawyers, no one talks to me like this. Straight, honest, unafraid. Should I be afraid? Darius asked. No, Frank said firmly. Not of him. Not anymore. He looked at his son. Right, Richard? Right, Dad. The word Dad hung in the air. Frank's eyes welled up, but he blinked the tears away. There's one more thing, Darius said. We do this publicly, but on our terms. Not as a publicity stunt, but as an example. Show people that different worlds can work together. That helping others isn't weakness. The board won't like that, Richard warned. Then convince them, Darius said. You're the CEO, right? For now. Then use that power while you have it. Do something that matters. Patricia watched her son with a mixture of pride and worry. You're asking him to risk everything. No, Darius said. I'm asking him to risk something for everything. There's a difference. Richard stood up and extended his hand to Darius. You have a deal. They shook hands, and in that moment, everyone felt something shift. Not just in the room, but in the trajectory of their lives. Now, what? Helen asked. Now, Richard said, I go fight my board. Darius starts learning the business. And we all figure out how to be a family again. We're not family, Patricia said carefully. Aren't we? Helen asked. Maybe not by blood, but by choice? Isn't that what family really is? Patricia's expression softened. I suppose it is. Richard's phone buzzed again. This time when he looked at it, he turned it off completely. They can wait, he said. This is more important. You should go, Frank said, but gently. Handle your business. But come back. For dinner, Helen added. Sunday dinner. All of you. We couldn't, Patricia started. Please, Helen said. We need this. A real family dinner. Okay, Patricia agreed. But we bring dessert. As Richard prepared to leave, he pulled Darius aside. That employment contract. Look it over with your mother. Have someone you trust review it. A teacher, maybe. Don't just take my word that it's fair. Why are you telling me this? Because that's what someone who really wants to help would say. And I'm trying to be that person. After he left, the two families, because that's what they were becoming, sat around the table, finishing breakfast. Do you trust him? Patricia asked Frank directly. I want to, Frank admitted. He's my son, but trust takes time to rebuild. What if he disappoints you again? Patricia pressed. Then we'll handle it, Helen said. But what if he doesn't? What if this is real change? Mom's the skeptic, Maya said. She doesn't believe in miracles. This isn't a miracle, Darius said. It's work, hard work, from all of us. You really think you can help them? Patricia asked her son. Fix their family? I don't think I can fix anything, Darius said. But maybe I can help them fix themselves. The way they're helping us fix our situation. That afternoon, while Patricia was at work and Maya at a friend's house, Darius sat with Frank and Helen in the park. They wanted to tell him more about Richard, about the boy he'd been before money changed him. He was sensitive, Helen said. Too sensitive, maybe. He felt everything so deeply. When his dog died when he was 10, he cried for weeks. What changed? Darius asked. College, Frank said. He got a scholarship to an Ivy League school. Suddenly, he was surrounded by wealthy kids who'd never struggled. He felt inferior, felt like he had to prove he belonged. So he became more like them than they were, Helen added. More ruthless, more focused on success. We watched our gentle boy turn into someone we didn't recognize. But he's still in there, Frank said. The boy who cried over his dog. I saw him today when he said, Dad, people don't really change, Darius said. They just hide who they are. Maybe we're helping him stop hiding. When did you become a philosopher? Helen asked with a smile. Tuesday, Darius said, completely serious. Right after I became unemployed. Oh wait, now I'm employed. By your son. This is weird, right? They laughed, all of them, and it felt good. Natural. That evening, Richard sat in his boardroom, facing 12 skeptical faces. You want to use company funds for what? Asked Robert Steinberg, the lead board member. A community foundation. Real help for real people. That's what taxes are for, another member said. Taxes aren't enough. We all know that. This is about that boy, isn't it? Steinberg said. The one you've been investigating. His name is Darius Williams. And yes, partly. But it's also about us. About what kind of company we want to be. We want to be profitable, someone said, and others nodded. We are profitable. Incredibly so. What if we could be profitable and good? Good doesn't pay dividends. Richard pulled up a presentation he'd been working on all afternoon. Actually, it does. Companies with strong community involvement show better long-term growth, better employee retention, better customer loyalty. Those are correlations, not causations. Then let's cause something, Richard said. Let's prove it works. The debate went on for 2 hours. In the end, they gave him conditional approval. 6 months to show results. If the foundation failed to meet specific metrics, it would be shuttered and Richard would step down. He called Darius that night. We got approval. Conditionally. What are the conditions? We have to succeed. Then we'll succeed, Darius said simply. You sound sure. I am. We have something they don't understand. What's that? We actually care. That makes all the difference. As Richard hung up, he thought about the boy's words. Care. Such a simple concept, but one he'd forgotten in his climb to the top. Maybe, with Darius's help, he could remember. Maybe they all could. Sunday dinner was approaching, and with it, the real test of whether this unlikely alliance could work. But for now, in this moment, hope felt possible. Change felt possible. Family, in all its forms, felt possible. Sunday dinners started with hope, but quickly revealed how fragile their new arrangement really was. Richard arrived at Frank and Helen's small apartment, carrying an expensive bottle of wine, still wearing his weekend casual clothes that probably cost more than Patricia's monthly salary. "You didn't need to bring anything," Helen said, but she was pleased. The apartment was cramped but clean, filled with photographs from better times. Richard stopped at one. Him, at his college graduation, Frank and Helen beaming beside him. "That was a good day," Frank said quietly behind him. "The last good day," Richard replied, then caught himself. I know what you meant," Frank said. "Let's not pretend everything's fixed. We're trying, but the wounds are still there." Patricia and her children arrived then, carrying a homemade apple pie. The contrast between the two families was sharp. Richard in his designer clothes, Darius in his worn but clean jeans, everyone trying to find common ground. They sat down to eat, Helen's pot roast filling the small space with warmth. The conversation started carefully. "So, Darius," Richard began, "I've scheduled your first day at the office for Tuesday. After school, what'll I be doing? Learning, watching, understanding how business works. The business that closed the factory here?" Frank asked suddenly, his voice sharp. The table went silent. "Dad, no, I need to say this." Frank set down his fork. "Your company bought Riverside Textiles 3 years ago. You promised to keep it open, to modernize it. Instead, you shipped those jobs overseas. Patricia lost her job there. Had to take 2 part-time jobs to make up the difference." Patricia looked stunned. "That was your company?" Richard's face had gone pale. "I didn't know you worked there. Would it have mattered?" Frank asked. "Of course it would have." "Really? Because you knew I had friends there. You knew this community depended on that factory. But the numbers made sense, right? The profit margins." "It wasn't that simple," Richard said weakly. "It never is, when you're the one making the decisions," Frank shot back. Darius watched the reconciliation crumbling before it had really begun. "Mr. Morrison," he said carefully, "what would you have had him do? Keep the factory open and lose money?" "Yes," Frank said immediately. "And when it went bankrupt, when everyone lost their jobs anyway." Frank turned to look at him. "You're defending it?" "I'm asking questions. There's a difference." "The factory was losing $1 million a month," Richard said quietly. "We kept it open for 8 months longer than we should have, trying to find a solution. We offered retraining programs, severance packages. Severance doesn't feed families for long," Patricia said, her voice steady but cold. "Retraining for what? There were no other jobs." "I know," Richard said. "I know, and I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring back jobs," Frank said. Helen, who had been quiet, suddenly stood up. "Stop it, all of you." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "Frank, you're angry at Richard for decisions he made in a system he didn't create. Richard, you're defending choices that hurt people because you felt you had no alternative. Patricia, you're judging him for something he might not even have been directly involved in." "I was involved," Richard admitted. "I signed off on the closure." "Then own it," Helen said. "Don't defend it. Own it. Say it was wrong. But the numbers. Forget the numbers." Helen's voice rose. "For once in your life, forget the numbers and talk about the people." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Then it was wrong. The system that made it seem like the only choice is wrong. I was wrong. That's a start," Frank said grudgingly. "What else did your company do?" Darius asked. "What other factories?" Richard listed them. With each name, Patricia's face grew harder. These weren't just factories to her. They were families she knew, communities destroyed. "And you want us to trust you with the foundation?" she asked. "I want to try to fix some of the damage," Richard said. "I can't bring back the factories, but maybe I can create something new." "Like what?" Maya asked, speaking up for the first time. "Jobs. Real jobs. Not just charity, but businesses that serve the community and make enough profit to sustain themselves." "That's a fantasy," Frank said. "Maybe, but what if it's not?" They finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. As they were clearing the table, Maya's phone buzzed. She looked at it and gasped. "Someone took our picture coming in," she said, showing them her phone. "It's already online." Millionaire Richard Hale scene with mysterious black family. Richard grabbed his phone, scrolling quickly. It's on 3 gossip sites already. This is what you brought to our door. Patricia asked, anger flashing in her eyes. I didn't. You didn't think, she corrected. You didn't think about what being associated with you would mean for us. Darius was reading the comments under one of the posts. They were exactly what you'd expect. Speculation about Richard buying something from them, assumptions about Patricia's character, racist comments barely disguised as concern. We should go, Patricia said, gathering her things. Please don't, Helen said. Not like this. Like what? Like people who don't want our business spread across the internet? Like a mother protecting her children? Mom, Darius said quietly. This isn't their fault. No? Then whose fault is it? The people taking pictures. The people making assumptions. The system that makes this seem strange or wrong. Patricia looked at her son, saw the determination in his eyes. You still want to do this? Even now. Especially now, Darius said. Because if we don't, they win. The people who want us to stay in our separate worlds, they win. Richard's phone rang. He looked at it, grimacing. It's Carla, my assistant. Gentlemen, ladies, Richard said, this is Darius Williams. He'll be working with us on the foundation. He's a child, Steinberg said bluntly. He's 16, Richard corrected. 15, Darius said. 16 next week. Even worse, Steinberg muttered. This is the boy from the pharmacy story? Another board member asked. The one who gave away his last money? Yes, Richard said. Foolish, someone commented. Compassionate, Richard countered. Same thing in business, Steinberg said. Darius felt anger rise in his chest. If compassion is foolish, then what does that make you? The room went silent. Excuse me, Steinberg said, his voice dangerous. You heard me, Darius said, surprising himself with his steadiness. If caring about others is foolish, if helping people is weak, then what does that make you? Strong? Or just selfish? This is exactly why children don't belong in boardrooms, Steinberg said to Richard. Or maybe it's exactly why they should be, Carla said from the doorway. She walked in carrying a tablet. The pharmacy story has gone properly viral now, but not in the way we expected. She connected her tablet to the main screen. Articles popped up, but these weren't gossip pieces. Real journalists had picked up the story. The headline from major newspaper read, The Last Coins, How One Boy's Kindness Exposes America's Healthcare Crisis. We're getting calls, Carla continued. Other pharmacies want to know about the foundation. 3 major pharmaceutical companies have offered to provide medicines at cost. And donations are coming in from regular people, small amounts, $5, $10, but they're coming. How much? Steinberg asked because numbers were all he understood. Since yesterday? $47,000. From small donations? People want to be part of something good, Carla said, looking directly at Darius. Something real. This could work, another board member said slowly. The PR value alone. It's not about PR, Richard interrupted. That's the point. It's about actually helping. Can it be both? The board member asked. Darius thought about it. Yes, but the helping has to come first. Otherwise, people will know it's fake. How would they know? Steinberg asked. Because we always know, Darius said. Poor people, struggling people. We can tell the difference between real help and photo opportunities. We've had too much practice. After the meeting, Richard walked Darius through the building, introducing him to people, showing him how things worked. In the afternoon, they visited the accounting department. This is where we track the money, Richard explained. Every penny in and out. Must be nice, Darius said. Having so much money you need a whole department to track it. It's also a responsibility, Richard said. Each number represents someone's job, someone's family. Do you think about that when you make decisions? I didn't used to, Richard admitted. I'm trying to now. They were interrupted by Richard's phone. His face went white as he answered. What hospital? I'm on my way. He hung up. My father, Frank, he collapsed. They're at Mercy General. They drove in silence, Richard's hands gripping the steering wheel. At the hospital, they found Helen in the waiting room with Patricia and Maya, who had come as soon as they heard. How is he? Richard asked. They're running tests, Helen said, tears on her face. His heart. They think it's his heart. Richard pulled out his phone. I'm calling the best cardiologist in the city. No, Helen said firmly. The doctors here are fine. Mom, please. I said no. Richard, you can't fix everything with money and connections. But I can fix this. Can you? Frank's voice came from the doorway. He was in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse, looking pale but alert. Can you fix the fact that I can't afford the surgery they say I need? Of course I can. I won't take your money, Frank said firmly. Dad, this is your life. Exactly. My life. My choice. That's pride talking, Patricia said unexpectedly. Stupid, stubborn pride. Everyone looked at her. I've been there, she continued. Too proud to take help. But you know what? Pride doesn't keep you warm. Pride doesn't fill your stomach. And pride won't keep your heart beating. This is different, Frank said. How? Because it's your son offering? Because you're still angry about the past? You don't understand. Understand perfectly, Patricia said. You'd rather die than forgive him completely. But what about Helen? What about the people who love you? Don't they get a say? Frank looked at his wife, saw the pain in her eyes. The surgery is expensive, he said weakly. Everything's expensive when you're poor, Darius said. That doesn't mean you choose to die. Frank looked at this boy who'd given his last coins to help them. You think I should take his money? I think you should take his help, Darius said. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Money is just money. Help is, it's love, try to find a way. Richard's eyes filled with tears. Please, Dad, let me help. Not because I owe you, but because I love you. Frank was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. But not just for me. The foundation, it pays for surgeries like mine for people who can't afford them. That's my condition. Richard smiled through his tears. Deal. That evening, while Frank was being prepped for surgery, Darius sat with Helen in the waiting room. You saved him, she said. What you said about help being love, that reached him. He saved himself by choosing to accept help. That's the hardest thing for proud people, Helen said. Accepting help. Why? Because it means admitting you're not enough on your own. And that feels like failure. But nobody's enough on their own, Darius said. That's why we have each other. Helen pulled him into a hug. You really are wise beyond your years. Just pour beyond my years, Darius said. It teaches you things. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. Richard had indeed called in the best cardiologist, and Frank had grudgingly accepted. The foundation would cover not just Frank's surgery, but would establish a cardiac care fund for others. As they prepared to leave the hospital that night, a reporter approached them in the parking lot. Mr. Hale, is it true you're paying for surgery for the parents who disowned you? No comment, Richard said, try to move past. And you, the reporter turned to Darius, the boy with the coins. What's your relationship to Mr. Hale? He's my employee, Richard said firmly. And a friend. Now please, is this all a publicity stunt? The reporter pressed. Rich man helps poor family. Darius stopped. You want to know what this is? Darius, don't, Richard warned. But Darius was already talking. This is people trying to help each other. This is families trying to heal. This is what happens when someone decides that doing right is more important than looking right. That's all. But the optics. Darius laughed. Man, we're just trying to keep a good man alive and help some family survive. If you want to make that into something else, that's on you. The reporter seemed taken aback by his directness. As they walked away, Richard said, You handled that well. I told the truth. That's all. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. That night, Darius couldn't sleep. He sat at his window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Saw you on the news. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there is more for people like us. Darius typed back. There's more for everyone. We just have to be brave enough to reach for it. And if we fall, then we get up, and we reach again. The next morning, Frank's surgery went perfectly. When he woke up, Richard was there, holding his mother's hand. Still here? Frank asked groggily. Always, Richard said. For now on, always. Frank squeezed his son's hand weakly. Good. The foundation was officially announced that afternoon. The prescription fund at Peterson's Pharmacy would be the first initiative, but plans were already in motion for surgical funds, job training programs, and small business grants for the community. At the press conference, a skeptical journalist asked, "Mr. Hale, isn't this just guilt money? Trying to make up for the factories you closed?" Richard started to give a corporate answer, but Darius stepped to the microphone. "Maybe it started as guilt," he said. "So what? If guilt makes someone do good, isn't that better than guilt that does nothing? People can change. Companies can change. But only if we let them try." "You're very young to be making such statements," the journalist said. "And you're old enough to know better than to dismiss someone because of their age," Darius replied. The room chuckled, and even the journalist smiled. Later, Steinberg pulled Richard aside. "The boy's got spine." "Yes, he does. The board is watching. 6 months, remember? We'll make it work. You better. Your job depends on it." "No," Richard said, looking at where Darius was talking to other reporters, handling their questions with grace and honesty. "More than my job depends on it. My soul depends on it." 3 months had passed since Frank's surgery, and the foundation was gaining momentum. But new storm clouds were gathering. Darius sat in Richard's office, looking at plans spread across the desk when Carla burst in. "We have a problem," she said, turning on the news. The screen showed a reporter standing outside their neighborhood. "Sources tell us that Blackstone Development has purchased multiple buildings in this area, with plans to renovate and raise rents by 300%. Darius's heart sank. "That's our building. That's everyone's building." Richard was already on his phone. "Give me Maxwell at Blackstone. I don't care if he's in a meeting." While Richard argued on the phone, Darius texted his mother. Her response was immediate. "Landlord just posted notices. We have 60 days. "They can't do that," Darius said. "They can't," Carla said grimly. "It's all legal." "Brutal, but legal." Richard hung up. "Maxwell won't budge. He says it's already in motion." "Who's behind it?" Darius asked. Richard hesitated. "The same investment group that's on our board. Steinberg's group." The pieces clicked into place. "This is punishment. Because the foundation is working." "We don't know that." "Yes, we do," Darius interrupted. "The foundation has helped 800 people in 3 months. The prescription fund alone has saved lives. The job training program has placed 40 people. We're succeeding, and they hate it. Even if that's true, what can we do?" Carla asked. "We fight," Darius said. "With what?" "They have all the power." "No," Darius said, standing up. "They have money. We have something better. We have community." That evening, an emergency meeting was called at the community center. The room was packed. Every family facing eviction, every person the foundation had helped, everyone who understood what was at stake. Councilman Thompson was there, the same one who'd wanted photo opportunities before. He stood at the front, trying to calm the crowd. "Now, I understand you're upset, but development is progress." "Progress for who?" Mrs. Washington called out. "Not for us. Property values will increase." "We rent," someone else shouted. "Higher property values just mean higher rent we can't afford." Thompson looked frustrated. "What do you want me to do? I can't stop legal business transactions." "You could if you wanted to," Patricia said, standing up. "You approved the zoning changes that made this possible. You took campaign contributions from Blackstone." Thompson's face reddened. "That's public record. Nothing illegal about it." "Legal and right aren't the same thing," Frank said. He was still recovering from surgery, but had insisted on coming. "You're supposed to represent us, not sell us out." "I represent the entire district." "No, el ininterruptive. You represent whoever pays you." The crowd murmured agreement, anger building. Richard stood up. What if there was another option? Everyone turned to look at him. He was the only person in a suit, clearly out of place but standing firm. Blackstone has purchased the buildings, but they haven't started renovations yet. That means they need construction permits, zoning approvals, various bureaucratic steps. "So," Thompson said, "so those take time? And during that time, if another buyer made a better offer, you want to buy the buildings?" Thompson asked skeptically. "Not me. The foundation. Turn them into community land trusts. Permanente affordable housing." "That's millions of dollars," Thompson said. 23 million, to be exact, Richard said. "I've already run the numbers." "The foundation doesn't have that kind of money," Steinberg's voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned as he walked forward, his presence commanding attention. And the board won't approve using company funds for this. Why are you here? Richard asked. To watch you fail, Steinberg said simply. Your 6 months are almost up. The foundation has helped some people, yes, but it hasn't met the profit metrics we agreed on. Because it's not supposed to make profit, Darius said. It's supposed to help people. Everything is supposed to make profit, Steinberg replied. That's how the world works, boy. Your world, maybe, Darius shot back. Not ours. Your world. Steinberg laughed. You don't have a world. You have a neighborhood that's about to be demolished. Then we'll build a new one, Maya said, surprising everyone by speaking up. She'd been my job, my position at the foundation. If we can't raise the money in 3 months, I'll quit. Publicly. Admit the foundation was a failure. Darius, no, Richard said. But Darius continued. And if we do raise it, you resign from a board. Publicly. And admit that profit isn't the only thing that matters. The room held its breath. Steinberg smiled coldly. You're on, boy. 3 months. 23 million. When you fail, you disappear, and Richard's little experiment ends. Deal, Darius said, extending his hand. Steinberg shook it, his grip crushing, but Darius didn't flinch. After Steinberg left, Richard pulled Darius aside. What have you done? What needed to be done, Darius replied. Now we get to work. The next 3 months were a blur. Maya organized a social media campaign that went viral. Hashtag Save Our Neighborhood started trending. Patricia coordinated with other displaced communities across the city. Frank and Helen, despite Frank's recovery, worked phones all day, calling in old favors. The foundation's story spread. News outlets picked it up. The boy with the coins versus the billionaire developer. David versus Goliath for the social media age. Donations poured in. $5 from a teacher in Texas. $20 from a nurse in Seattle. $1,000 from a small business owner who'd been helped by a similar program years ago. But it wasn't enough. After 2 months, they'd raised $3 million. Impressive, but far short of the goal. We need a miracle, Patricia said at the weekly planning meeting. Or a millionaire, Carla said, looking at Richard. I can't, Richard said miserably. The board has frozen my assets pending the 6-month review. I can't access my own money. This is hopeless, someone said. No, Darius said firmly. We keep going. We keep fighting. Then, unexpected help arrived. Marcus, the same Marcus who'd bullied Darius, showed up at the community center. I want to help, he said simply. Why? Darius asked. Because you were right. There is more for people like us. But only if we fight for it. Marcus brought his crew. Kids who'd been seen as troubles became organizers. They painted murals telling the neighborhood's story. They organized benefit concerts. They recorded videos that made hardened journalists cry. 2 weeks before the deadline, they'd raised $8 million. Better, but still not enough. Then Frank did something unexpected. He called his son publicly, in front of cameras at a press conference. Richard, he said, looking directly into the camera, I know you're watching. For 3 years, I let pride keep us apart. I was wrong. But I learned something from a 15-year-old boy with $4 to his name. Sometimes love means accepting help, and sometimes it means asking for it. He paused, gathering himself. Son, we need help, not just money. We need business leaders to stand up and say that communities matter more than profit margins. We need people with power to use it for something good. We need you to be the man I raised, not the man the world made you become. The video went viral in hours. That night, Richard's phone rang. It was another CEO, watching from Silicon Valley. That your father? Yes. He's right. Communities do matter. I'm in for $2 million. Another call. Another CEO. My company started in a neighborhood like that. $1 million. By morning, pledges were coming from business leaders across the country. Some gave from guilt. Some from genuine care. Some because they saw the writing on the wall. The public was tired of displacement and gentrification. On the final day, they were still short. 18 million raised, 5 million to go. Richard stood before the board for his 6-month review, knowing he was about to lose everything. The foundation has failed to meet profit metrics, Steinberg said triumphantly. I moved to dissolve it immediately. Second, another board member said. Wait, Carla said. entering the room. Before you vote, you should see this. She turned on the screen. A live stream from the community center showed thousands of people gathered. Darius stood at a microphone. We're 5 million short, he was saying. But that's not defeat. That's proof that ordinary people can raise $18 million when they work together. That's proof that community matters. The crowd cheered. Mr. Steinberg thinks profit is all that matters. But look around. Look at the families here. The elderly couple who started this whole thing with their medical crisis. The single mothers working 3 jobs. The kids who deserve better. We matter. Our lives matter. Our community matters. More cheers. And to Richard Hale, wherever you're watching this, thank you. Win or lose, you tried. You chose people over profit. You chose love over money. Your parents are proud of you. We're proud of you. Richard's eyes filled with tears. And to anyone watching who has $5 million to invest in humanity, now would be a good time. The live stream chat exploded. Small donations poured in, but they needed something bigger. Then, a message appeared on screen. Anonymous donor, $5 million confirmed. The community center erupted. People cried, hugged, celebrated. In the boardroom, Steinberg's face was purple. This proves nothing. The vote proceeds. Actually, Carla said, it doesn't. Because I have something else. She pulled out a tablet, showing financial records. Mr. Steinberg, you've been using insider information from board meetings to guide Blackstone's purchases. That's illegal. The SEC would be very interested in these transactions. Steinberg went white. You can't prove. I can. I've been documenting everything for months. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign. Quietly. You're going to withdraw Blackstone's purchase offer. And you're going to disappear. Or this goes public and you go to prison. Steinberg looked around the room for support, found none. Even his allies wouldn't back illegal activity. Fine, he spat. But this changes nothing. The world still runs on profit. Maybe, Richard said. But our world doesn't have to. 6 months later, spring had come to the neighborhood. The buildings now belonged to a community land trust, permanently affordable. The foundation had expanded, helping 3 other neighborhoods fight displacement. At the pharmacy, a small steel plaque had been installed by the prescription fund sign-up sheet. Coins for Care Fund, founded by neighbors. Below it, in smaller text, started with $4.32 and a belief that someone had to help. Darius stood looking at it, remembering that cold evening that had changed everything. Admiring your handiwork? Mr. Peterson asked. It's not mine, Darius said. It belongs to everyone. That's what makes it yours, Mr. Peterson replied. You understood that from the beginning. Patricia had been promoted to manage the foundation's job training program. Her experience on the factory floor, once seen as limitation, was now recognized as expertise. She knew what people needed because she needed it herself. Maya was thriving in her accelerated program, already taking college-level courses. Her research on community development had been published in an academic journal, the youngest author they'd ever featured. I'm going to be a doctor, she told Darius, but also an advocate. Medicine isn't just about individual bodies. It's about community health. When did you become so wise? Darius asked. When I watched my brother change the world with $4 and courage, she replied. The Morrison family dynamic had completely transformed. Richard came for dinner every Sunday, not in a suit, but in jeans and a sweater Helen had knitted for him. He and Frank had started a tradition of fixing things together. First Frank's leaky faucet, then Mrs. Chin's broken stairs, then whoever needed help. It's like when you were young, Helen said, watching them work. Before the world told you to be different. I'm trying to remember who I was, Richard admitted. Darius helps. He reminds me that kindness isn't weakness. Never was, Frank said, passing his son a wrench. Just took us a while to remember that. The foundation had hired 20 people from the neighborhood, including Marcus, who'd become youth program coordinator. His transformation had been remarkable, from bully to leader, from destroyer to builder. Why did you really change? Darius asked him one day. You want the truth? My grandmother. She saw that first news story about you. Said I was wasting my life tearing others down when I could be building something. Said you had more courage in your little finger than I had in my whole body. That's harsh. That's grandmother's. Marcus laughed. But she was right. I was angry at the wrong people. You showed me who really deserved that anger. The anonymous $5 million donor had never been revealed, though Darius had suspicions. A week after the donation, he'd received a letter with no return address. Young man, I was once like you, poor, determined, trying to help others. I let the world harden me, chose profit over people. Watching you these past months reminded me of who I used to be. The money isn't charity. It's an apology to my younger self. Use it well. A friend, Carla, had become the foundation's executive director, designing transparent systems that other nonprofits began adopting. She turned down 3 corporate offers to stay. This work matters, she said simply. Profit is necessary, but purpose is essential. One morning, Darius found an envelope under his door. Inside was a silver coin and a note from Frank and Helen. For the first coin that started all this. Keep it as a reminder. Small acts of kindness can change the world. Love, your grandparents and everything but blood. Darius kept the coin in his pocket, a tangible reminder of how far they'd all come. The transformation wasn't just in their neighborhood. The foundation's model was being replicated in 12 cities. The prescription fund had inspired federal legislation. The job training program had become a case study at business schools. But for Darius, the biggest change was personal. He'd started his senior year of high school with confidence he'd never had before. When Mr. Brennan tried to dismiss his ideas in class, other students defended him. When college recruiters came, they sought him out. Full scholarship, one recruiter said. Business program. We need leaders like you. I'm not sure I want to study business, Darius said. What do you want to study? Community development, urban planning, how to build neighborhoods that serve everyone, not just the wealthy. We have a program for that too, the recruiter smiled. One evening, Richard called Darius into his office. Not the corporate one, but the small one at the foundation. The board wants to make you a full board member, he said. Youngest in any major foundation's history. I'm 17, and you've done more for this community than people 3 times your age. It wasn't just me. I know. That's why you're perfect for it. You understand that leadership isn't about being the hero. It's about helping others be heroic. Darius thought about it. Can I bring others? Maya for research, Marcus for youth programs, Mrs. Washington for community insight. Richard smiled, already thinking like a board member. Yes. The ceremony for Darius's appointment was held at the community center. No suits, no fancy speeches, just neighbors gathering to celebrate one of their own. Thompson, who'd lost his election but found work with a genuine community organization, attended. You taught me something, he told Darius. That serving the community means actually serving, not just appearing to. Everyone can learn, Darius replied. Everyone can change. As the evening wound down, Darius stood outside, looking at the neighborhood. Same buildings, but somehow everything was different. Gardens where empty lots had been. A playground where dealers used to stand. The pharmacy bright and busy with the prescription fund. A young boy, maybe 12, approached him. Darius recognized the look, worn clothes, tired eyes, weight of responsibility too heavy for young shoulders. Is it true, the boy asked, what they say about you, that you gave your last money to help strangers? It's true. Why? Because someone had to. The boy pulled out a handful of coins, counting them. My grandma needs medicine. Insurance won't cover it all. I was saving for new shoes, but... He trailed off, conflict clear on his face. Darius knelt down to the boy's level. What's your name? Jerome. Jerome, the prescription fund can help your grandma. No one has to choose between shoes and medicine anymore. Really? Really? But that money you saved? Keep it. Or better yet, Darius smiled, remembering. Is there someone else you know who needs help? Someone who might be too proud to ask. Jerome thought. Mrs. Bailey. She's been eating just crackers for a week. Then you know what to do. Jerome looked at his coins, then at Darius. Because someone has to. Because someone has to, Darius confirmed. As Jerome ran off, Darius felt a hand on his shoulder. Richard stood beside him, Frank and Helen behind him, Patricia and Maya too. His family, all of them. Passing it forward, Helen said softly. That's how it works, Darius replied. One person helps another. Then they help someone else. Eventually, everyone's helping everyone. Idealistic, Richard said, but fondly. Realistic, Frank countered. We're living proof. As night fell over the neighborhood, lights came on in windows. Not just the harsh fluorescence of poverty, but warm lights of homes where families felt secure. The prescription fund had saved 43 lives. The job training program had placed 200 people. The land trust had preserved 300 homes. All from a moment when a 15-year-old boy had $4.32 and chose to help strangers buy medicine. Standing there, surrounded by family both born and chosen, Darius pulled out the silver coin Frank and Helen had given him. It caught the streetlight, gleaming with possibility. What are you thinking? Maya asked. That mom was right. The most complicated problems really do have simple solutions. What's the solution? Darius pocketed the coin and looked at his community, his world, transformed by collective kindness. Care about each other. Help when you can. Remember that everyone matters. And when you see someone struggling, be the person who says someone has to help, and then does it. That's it. That's everything. A year later, at Darius's high school graduation, the valedictorian speech wasn't about test scores or college plans. It was about community, kindness, and the power of small actions to create great change. I learned, Darius told the packed auditorium, that being poor doesn't mean being powerless. That kindness isn't weakness. That sometimes the smallest act of help can ripple outward in ways you never imagine. He looked at the audience, his mother crying proud tears, Maya recording everything, Frank and Helen beaming like grandparents, Richard nodding with paternal pride, Marcus whooping from the back, Mrs. Washington dabbing her eyes, Mr. Peterson applauding. $4.32, Darius concluded. That's what I had in my pocket when this all started. Now, our foundation has helped thousands. Not because I'm special, but because I learned a simple truth. Someone has to help. And that someone can be anyone. That someone can be you. The applause was thunderous, but Darius barely heard it. He was watching Jerome in the third row, the boy he'd met months ago. Jerome was nudging his friend, pulling out some coins, whispering something that made his friend's eyes widen with hope. The cycle continued. The ripple spread. And in a neighborhood once marked for destruction, a community thrived, bound together by the simplest and strongest force in the world. People choosing to care for each other. Because someone had to, and everyone could. What would you have done with those last $4.32? Chosen your family's hunger or a stranger's heartbeat? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful tales that remind us that sometimes the smallest acts of courage can change everything.